In Belarus over Sunday's disputed election results show no sign of dying down. So far, we've seen violence, strikes and lines of solidarity, but the latest scenes from the capital's Independence Square indicate the direction maybe that the protests are going to head next. Here's what's been happening when troops protecting the House of Government, as it's called, lowered their shields in an apparent sign of solidarity with the demonstrators.
Al-Aqsa Mosque, the third holy site for Muslims, has witnessed anger from Palestinians towards Israel before. But this time, it's also directed at the United Arab Emirates over the deal they reached with Israel to normalize ties. Palestinians even burned a photograph of UAE leader Mohammed bin Zayed and called him a traitor. Not only Palestinians, but Turkey also criticized the deal. But the Muslim world has varied reactions to the deal. Iran strongly condemned the agreement and called it a strategic stupidity. Jordan is cautiously optimistic and says the region can move towards peace if Israel uses it as an incentive to end occupation. Egypt, as the first country which formalized ties with Israel, welcomed the deal along with Bahrain and Oman. But many Palestinians believe the deal is a step in the back and also ruins any plans for peace.
It was a quick and unceremonious end to the United States' efforts to extend the Iranian arms embargo.
The result of the voting is as follows: 2 votes in favor, 2 votes against, 11 as abstentions. The draft resolution has not been adopted, having failed to obtain the required number of votes.
In a statement, U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo called it an inexcusable failure, saying, quote, "The Security Council paved the way for the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism to buy and sell conventional weapons without specific UN restrictions in place for the first time in over a decade." Under an agreement negotiated by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council and Germany aimed at stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons, the 13-year-old ban on conventional weapons sales is due to expire in October.
The US is calling it the largest seizure of fuel from Iran. It's intercepted 4 tankers carrying more than 1 million barrels of oil to Venezuela after winning a federal court order last month.
We have 4 tankers. They go into Houston, and they're there. They're not supposed to be doing that. Iran's not supposed to be doing that. And so we did. We seized the tankers, and we're moving them and moved to Houston.
But Iran says the Liberian-flagged ships have nothing to do with them. It accuses the US of lies and psychological warfare. The details of the capture are murky. When the seizure order was produced more than a month ago, all of the ships turned off their tracking devices, seemingly not wanting to be found.
Argentina and Mexico are calling it a landmark vaccine deal, not just for them, but for Latin America. The 2 countries have agreed to produce hundreds of millions of doses for the region of the highly regarded AstraZeneca vaccine, designed by Oxford University scientists. And they say it will be free for all Mexicans and sold without profit elsewhere in Latin America during the pandemic. The hope is that it means this poorer region won't have to wait in line behind wealthier nations for a potential lifesaver.
In the face of China's saber rattling, Taiwan is planning to increase defense spending for 2021 to nearly 453.5 billion NT. That represents nearly 2.4% of the GDP, and 29 billion NT have been earmarked for the purchase of F-16V fighter jets from the U.S. President Tsai Ing-wen says she expects defense spending to continue growing in the coming years.
The DPRK says it's lifting lockdown measures on Kaesong City near the country's southern border. State media outlet Korean Central News Agency says top leader Kim Jong-un announced that 3 weeks of isolation and quarantine has stabilized the situation after a possible COVID-19 outbreak scare. But Kim Jong-un also said the country's borders will remain shut. Kaesong was locked down after the DPRK confirmed its first suspected case late last month. Authorities say a defector who fled back to the DPRK from South Korea was showing symptoms of COVID-19.
Tonight, the Postal Service is warning states nationwide it may not be able to handle the expected flood of mail-in ballots this November, suggesting all of the votes in this year's presidential election might not be delivered in time to be counted. Today, President Trump again threatened to withhold federal funding, even members of his own party say is desperately needed by a postal service that's stretched to the limit. And even as the president continues to falsely insist mail-in voting will lead to widespread fraud, today we learned he requested his own absentee ballot from Florida earlier this week. Tonight, in a rare interview, former President Barack Obama is accusing President Trump of, in his words, suppressing the vote instead of suppressing the virus.
Let's turn to Nepal and see what's cooking there. The mysterious death of a journalist has become a watershed moment for the entire Nepalese media. Journalists from various media organizations in this Himalayan republic are coming together to demand justice. Justice for Balram Bania, the assistant editor of one of the most widely read newspapers in Nepal, the Kantipur Daily. He was just 50 years old, and he is said to have been somebody who never capitulated to pressure. On Monday, the 10th of August, Balram Bania went missing. He went out of contact with his family and office. Initial reports say that he was swept away in a river after falling from a bridge. His body was found on Tuesday, but the identity could not be ascertained immediately. His face was badly damaged. It was only yesterday that the local police confirmed that the body they had discovered was of Balram Bania.